Back in the next on Arena for more SSL Premier. It's going to be Solar versus Classic, another PVZ. I think it's our second of the night, rather, and should be a very close one. We've saved the best two for the last, or at least what we had thought would be the closest two, even though the series so far have been very close.
Yep, Solar, the strong ZVP player against Classic,
the strong PVZ player.
Yeah, he's good at PVZ. His adaptation against Stats' playstyle last week, I feel like, is the reason why I think he's going to do very well in this series. He's clearly showing good preparation from week to week, and did get his out of the GSL round of 32 with a 2-0 score, getting out in first place. This guy's kind of on a roll right now. The reason why Solar has had so much success in these in this matchup directly head-to-head is because of his ZVP, especially when you look at lifetime results. The extra 2 games there at the beginning when they first faced each other was when Solar's at his best ZVP. But it looks like it's carried over, and maybe the momentum will be shifted a little bit if Classic can come back to form. 2017, he's been looking really good so far, and I kind of lean towards him a little bit here tonight, Valdez.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, Solar, he is doing decently so far. I mean, he's sitting at 2-2, but he just lost to Alive. That's definitely one of those losses that you have to question. Yes, Alive is doing better. He is looking a little bit better for sure, but not up to the level that we expected out of Solar, as well as Hero, who also went down to Alive today. So coming up in this match against Classic, Classic definitely looking like one of our top dogs for this SSL Premier Season 2. Whereas Solar, he looked a little bit better in Season 1, and this is definitely a defining moment for him. Can he put up a fight against Classic with all the cards on the table? I mean, Classic has seen so much ZVP from this guy. He has to know his style.
Yeah, and remember, too, that Classic is another one of those players at 3-1 at the top, so he has a much better score than Deer does. The +3 indicator he's left with. Deer, of course, you know, not ending up with a better score than he wanted. He didn't get the 2-0 against Biel tonight, but he's going to go up just the +1. And for Classic to maintain his spot, if he's going to take the win, because we're all the 3-1 players are all the top ones. They're all looking to be about consistent with each other, so every map score really matters. Because we're past the halfway point, right? This is something I would never mention in week 1, 2, 3, or 4, but as we're in week 5 now, it's something that's really important. So Solar, this would be a really important win for him to lead the bottom tier. He's number 6 right now, wants to jump up. He made finals. He's the finalist of Season 1. It's time to repeat that form here in Season 2.
Yep, looking to make a play into the playoffs. We'll see if he can do it going into game number 1 up against Classic on Ascension to Iron. Fly, better fly, Jin Air. As we go into set number 4.
Very well said.
Down in the bottom right, the purple Zerg is Solar. In the yellow for Splice.
Yep. And of course, his opponent is in the yellow here, Classic. You said Solar was yellow for Splice, but you mean just the color of his uniform, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The purple Zerg and the yellow for Splice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the darker part of the uniform is not really anywhere near purple, but his skin in-game, yeah, drone. I just got a little bit confused. I mean, he's even got the yellow ring around here as the observer's highlight in the drone. Throwing me off a little bit.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I think this will be a proxy hatchery, yeah. Solar, definitely one of the Zergs that will mix this into his play. And you see the crazy macro style that Classic has in PvZ. You don't want to play against it. You're like, okay, let's start off with a nice little cheese that perhaps he's not going to be expecting. And at least Classic win for the scout. We'll come over here. We'll see no hatchery. We'll go into the main and see no pool either and say, okay, something weird's going on.
Classic has kind of made the style and really, I suppose you could say, not revolutionized, but really tightened up the way that Protosses take the third base in PvZ on maps like this, on maps like Newkirk, Precinct, and it's almost like he's got the best recipe for the third base, right? It's like everyone could take a third base, but you want Classic's recipe, and now that everyone's seen it, now that it's leaked basically, shown it so many times, the oracles, the safe defense, that you want to throw a wrench into the gear. You want to say, okay, you got to take a third base, or you got to bake a cake without frosting. That's basically what Solar is saying with this. You're not going to be able to follow the recipe exactly. You're going to have to make a few changes. You're going to have to make a few detours along the way, because I've thrown this proxy hatch at you. It is going to be the Roach Warren, actually. He doesn't make the natural, just going to be a Roach push here. The Speedlings will come across the map from the main base, but the Roaches are going to come from the forward base. And in fact, he hasn't started speed yet.
Yeah. Saving all that gas for Roaches. He wants to make sure that he can make as many as possible. Save up the larva from all of his bases and go for that. Only 2 Lings will come out for the poking at the front.
I almost feel like he's mined too much gas since he's not going to get the speed here. Ooh, nice kill on this probe. That Zealot is going to want to get back into the tight wall. He doesn't know exactly what's coming his way. Just going to be pure Roaches. The extra gas here quite in excess. And he's so low on money. In fact, minerals are the premium. That's what Solar is looking for. Pulling out a gas would give him at least the opportunity to build more Roaches here as he gets the Overlords out.
Good response by Classic here. He sees those building larvae, and he can only assume that those are Roaches. He says, okay, I'm not going to go attack the hatchery, not going to waste my time with that. I'm going to make a more secure wall, save my Mothership Core, take 0 damage from the Queen, and just wait for you to attack.
Yeah, it's going to be Ravagers that he spends his gas on, not Speedlings. So bursting down the wall is just the first step to getting a longer advantage here. He's not just going to try to stream Lings across with that extra gas, with the speed, of course. He doesn't have any Lings with this at all. Going to try to kind of siege up these pylons here that have been overcharged to burst them down to then break through with the more Roaches he's producing back at home. Zealot going down here. Every unit is so precious for Classic right now. He has the wall here. Needs to get Warp Gate research. I'm not sure if he will, in fact, if the target is on this.
Trying to focus that down, but he's not prioritizing that right now. He needs to get more of these corrosive piles and focus it down right now. Here we go. It's going to come down to the wire, and it will get focused down with 6 seconds left to go. Nicely done by Solar, knowing the time of that.
Well, people always wondered, people always said, what would StarCraft be like without Warp Gate research? In this case, against the All-In, we're going to see.
Okay, Immortal, incredibly important in this moment in time.
Yeah, he's just desperately trying to get Zealots out here. The Immortal already using its barrier. It has to be microed perfectly right now. Chrono Boost on probes, curiously, actually, as he panics a little bit here. On the Nexus, he's not even building probes right now. Needs to be on the gateways. He's chrono boosting the Immortal, of course, but gateways could be producing a little bit faster. Doesn't want to throw this Zealot away. It does go down immediately. Probes are off the line. Classic is in dire straits right now. That's the end of the Immortal, and you have to think the end, potentially, of this game. He just doesn't have anything else he can use to produce. The Warp Gate research being taken away was the final nail in the coffin. He couldn't, of course, make ranged units either, except the Immortals, and it looks like this is the beginning of the end.
Yeah, he's trying to win the game with 1 Immortal, but it's not going to happen, unfortunately, for Classic. He can micro his heart out, but again, it comes down to a game of numbers, and I love that Solar goes for this build. He catches that Immortal, and that's going to do it. GG, putting a huge wrench into the build of Classic. That's what you've got to do. This player has shown vulnerability when he gets put under pressure, and Solar is the Zerg to put on pressure. I love that build in game 1.
Yeah, he's got the Ravagers for the siege. He's got the Roaches, the range that's going to pick at the wall. So for Classic, he was so focused on trying to get as many units out as possible, but at the end of the day, he just didn't have enough. And when the bios came in and the pylons were basically just kind of baited out, the overcharges came in, he just kept building up a larger Ravager count. Using that gas, he continued to mine. That I was wondering about, I was questioning, is he just going to pure try to Roach bust this? Why does he need this much gas? It was for the Ravagers, for the siege there. Got the Cybernetics core down. Then no more Stalkers, no more Adepts, no more range, and 1 Immortal versus the world is just not going to be enough.
Yeah. You have to think, what could have Classic done to hold that off a little bit better? It's very hard to say, right? Because it hits so fast, and it hits when you have one Immortal. There's not many other units that can come out here. He made 2 Zealots. Those are going to be totally useless against that, right? Maybe you have to make only Stalkers that come out, but it's like he wanted to save his gas, and he didn't have enough pylons, perhaps. There was that one that got caught out in the beginning, and of course the Corrosive Biles will have more range to take them out anyway. So just that slow push in, it's definitely a hard one to hold, but Classic didn't have the tools to do it.
He made the Zealots too. He lost the core and he was forced to, but before that, it looked like he was worried, as I was, that when the wall comes down, a bunch of Speedlings are going to come, and he wanted to have the Zealots to deal with that perhaps, but either way, man, Solar, confident, cool and collected, despite being scouted, is able to take that first win.
Yeah, so guys, we're jumping onto Newkirk Precinct for game number 2. Can Classic fight back with his macro style, or will Solar throw another wrench? Number 2 going on to Newkirk Precinct. The ZVP Master down in the bottom right, looking to take another name. It is Splice's Solar.
And down to the bottom left in yellow, his opponent, it is Classic. So this is the map where the style we talked about, the Stargate play into the third base, the recipe that Classic has, this is his most effective map, right? We've seen him do so well on this map, holding off the third base, dealing with Hydra Bane pressure, and it's his highest map pick, obviously, in this matchup, and it is the highest drafted map in this specific best of 3. It's the map he wanted. It's why he put it first so he could play it no matter what, and you know, of the 3 maps, this is the one he's most comfortable on. Sure, the first one, it was the wrench thrown into the gears of the build. On Overgrowth for the third map, if we go to it, it's going to be a lot more aggression open to Solar, the shorter rush distance to the third base, and the safer third base for the Zerg. But this is going to be Classic's map, and he needs to turn it around. And I wonder if Solar will actually play the straight-up game on the best map of Classic, or if he's going to, again, have found some sort of weakness, some sort of way to exploit this systematic approach to taking the third base of Classic.
It's definitely a good question to ask, but if I had to think about it, part of the reason rather, why Classic is so good on this map is it's very hard to do weird stuff like that, right? You're not going to proxy the hatchery at the third base. It's going to be scouted out immediately. He can deal with it a lot faster in that case. You're not going to do the same build twice in a row. Getting the roaches over there and trying to do some weird kind of bust, not really going to be effective either. I think if you go for something weird, maybe some kind of Baneling bust, I don't think roaches are the way. I would like to see him play that straight-up game. He's shown that he is confident in ZVP in the past. He will start off by taking this third hatchery. Doesn't always mean that the macro game is coming. Sometimes they just use that for the extra larva so they can pump out some more aggressive units. We'll have to wait and see what the plan is here for Solar.
Yeah, only time will tell. But so far, it's as standard as it gets. And we'll see what the approach to the third base is for Classic. You have to assume, again, the Stargate is going to be the way. In fact, it looks like he's even going to queue it up here right now. So pops it down in the main base. A little bit more hidden than dropping it at the natural against ground forces, but obviously will be scouted. It won't be a shock to Solar either. The Stargate allows him to, with the faster rush by air, go over, poke, harass, and shut down vision if he commits to a single Phoenix. But it's most importantly about the Oracles that protect the third base against the follow-up attacks that are always going to live, always going to be effective against the Banelings, for example. And the Korean commentators popped off about that Adept patrolling for some reason. I couldn't hear exactly what they were talking about, but I was like, am I missing something here? But
they're liking my Baneling bust idea,
yeah.
No doubt. They heard me from over there, way on yonder on the desk. But, I mean, yeah, it is a very wide ramp with only a pylon there to protect. Would have been interesting to see him go for it. Solar's definitely one of those guys. Sue, another Zerg that I could think of that could go for it, but will just be this standard follow-up. The macro game coming out for now. He's going to add a couple of the Spore Crawlers here in the main and the natural. Nothing at the third base just yet. And, of course, this is totally scouted by Solar. The Adept just comes over here and clarifies that for his team. He's like, okay, we have been scouted. And here comes the Oracle.
First one moves across. Lair pops up here for Solar. Just droning heavily. He's going to try to at least meet Classic in terms of drone production here while the Larva pops out. He's behind right now because of Chrono Boost, but shortly we'll catch up. But this is not the same build from Classic. This is not the fast third base with Oracles. This is the 2 Stargate. This could be similar to what we just saw earlier on with Deer and Biel. Could be the massive Oracle follow-up with a few Phoenixes for map control. The Void Ray is something nobody expects to see in this situation. Looks like he wants to ward the Overlord away with it and then maybe use it to help hold the third while he goes double Stargate. But again, let's be clear. This is not normal.
Yeah, I mean, this is not what we see day to day on the SSL for sure. Maybe it's something that is coming up more recently on the ladder where these players are like, oh, actually going double Stargate is good again. We can go for this type of play. We can punish them before they get enough Hydras out. And definitely he's very well known for being good with 2 Oracles against Zerg. Comes in, gets 8 drone kills, and gets away, keeps both of them alive. Meanwhile, taking a third base with 2 more Oracles on the way. He's going to be killing as many Overlords as possible as well. Actually,
the Overlord is almost morphed into an Overseer to get in there and confirm the scout. He's going to send a second one here, so he will eventually see this. But the Void Ray did its job, killing this Overlord before a Phoenix could have, for example. So we'll be able to help defend later on as well. We're seeing the one-shots here from Classic with the Oracles in the main base. Takes the 3rd drone down there, so takes a very massive lead in Harvesters. Has the 3rd base halfway completed. The Forge coming up. Yeah, okay, this is going to be the plan. But, I mean, Classic is basically in a great spot as long as he can identify this, though. He's got a lot of units here that can burst down the units coming out. The Roaches, for example, just can't deal damage to these air units. But scouting is going to be the first factor. Using the Void Ray to burst down the Spore. So a different tactic to what we saw from Deer earlier. Just wants to kill this ASAP much faster. Good micro here on the Oracles, but still doesn't scout the Nidus network. And a lot of energy used that's not going to be available when the attack hits.
A 3rd Stargate as well here as well. He doesn't have any Robo coming out. He doesn't have anything to deal with the Roaches. I mean, lots of Oracles will deal with a small number of Roaches, don't get me wrong. Also, Solar's economy has been pretty wrecked, so he's going to have to hit hard and hit fast with this Nidus. Looks like it's canceled and then remade. I was wondering why it was still down there at the very low portions of its production.
That's weird. He's going to lose a lot of these queens because there's just simply not enough of them to combat this. Sure, if he has some transfuses, he could buy time for the energy to run out, but he just doesn't have enough. Sporecrawler completes, but more drones going down. You can almost argue Solar doesn't have an economy right now. He's just living off of borrowed time with these Harvesters that he's down to 35 of on 3 bases. Doesn't have the full saturation. Here comes a Nidus, going to be hitting ground. He lost a lot of queens, so the attack was weakened. But look at this. The scout comes in. 3 Oracles about to pop out. You might think he was going to add some more Void Rays here. Let's see what he wants to add. 4 Gateways coming up too. Here comes a Nidus. Focus down immediately. He's here right away. Transfuses. There's not as many queens as he would have liked. It's taken out. And this is not it. GG.
2 queens, it seems, is not enough to go for that. So nice little build there from Classic. Not sure if he sniffed out the Nidus that was coming, but just having enough stuff in the air that can kill those queens fast enough, get through all that transfuse energy, and that just totally kills the push from Solar. So Solar trying to follow up with something as his economy gets crippled, and it does not work out. So we have ourselves another 1-to-1 score here. And
4 for 4 going to game 3.
Yeah, we're going into Overgrowth too for game number 3. So our shortest map in the pool. It's a map that Solar really definitely does love. It was his first pick, and that is why we do get it here in this series. So we'll be looking for some more shenanigans, hopefully. And we'll see what he wants to do on this kind of map.
Yeah, let's see if Classic wants to go adept-oriented here instead of going down the Stargate path, because obviously you can hit that 3rd base when it first comes up, harass the drones, use some shade pressure to take your 3rd. But if he wants to go for the Stargate, it's not necessarily going to be as safe. The rush distance not as far. The 3rd base is far for the Protoss. Doesn't feel as far away for the Zerg with the creep connection coming in. I kind of have to favor Solar going into this map, but morale might be at an all-time low for him as he got shut down on the 2nd game. The first map, he got lucky there. Will he be able to play a straight-up game as we go into Overgrowth? That's the question.
Yeah, so here we go. Game number 3, Solar versus Classic. Let's jump onto Overgrowth and see who will be the victor tonight. Hopping onto Overgrowth to finish out our 4th series of the night. The purple Zerg playing for Splice. It is Solar.
And down to the bottom left in yellow, it is Classic. Dealing with that Nidus very well. Identifying it early, but also killing those queens. He wanted to kill the queens to kill drones. He didn't realize, of course, without vision, that the queens were the crux of the Nidus play. And luckily for Classic, he sure did make it work, right? The queens were picked off there early on by the Oracles. He had a decent ground army. He had warp ends available constantly because he had the really strong 3-base economy. And then the queens couldn't transfuse the Nidus. He couldn't get everything out. He had enough air units. There weren't queens to kill the air units. So how could the Roach push with the Lings there ever even hope to work for Solar? So this 2 Stargate Oracle play is coming back. The Void Ray was a cool touch because it deals with the Overlord that's trying to scout it. Then you kill the Spore a lot faster than having an additional Oracle there. Sure, you kill the Spore probably either way, but much faster with the Void Ray. So a different variation than what we saw from Deer earlier.
Yeah, especially compared to a couple of Phoenixes that kind of just hang around and don't do much. You know, they can lift the queens as you go for the attack, but the overall just sheer power of the Void Ray, it's a bit more expensive, but definitely does work out pretty nicely. So Classic just going to go Gate Nexus Core, going to play it standard as we would assume he always would. The question remains, does Solar have any confidence to play a straight-up game against Classic? Because we saw Classic go for his bread and butter, right? The double Oracle, he was allowed to do it this time around, and he just crushed Solar's Mineral Line. So Solar, does he try to just take the more defensive approach and say, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm ready for your Oracles this time? Or does he have another weird build plan? Because as you were saying when we got a shot of him, he wasn't looking all too confident.
Yeah, I mean, the game 1 build, I think, threw Classic for a loop, and you can always feel like that was well executed. It was an executed strategy that looked like, okay, I've prepared this for this map. We're going to play on it. I know it's the map that that we're likely to see here, and he brings it out. He has time to prepare it. Execution is good. He's like, all right, grab that first win. Now I'm going to seal the deal with this Nidus play. I've prepared it against what Classic is showing, which was very similar to what he normally shows, but Classic has the 2 Stargate build. Everything goes wrong there. He gets shut down. And I feel like if he's prepared to try to take the quick 2-0 like that, and it's like, well, we'll just wing it in Game 3 if it gets to that, but I've got these 2 good builds. I think I'm going to win with them. He's probably feeling pretty frustrated right now that he has to play on this 3rd map. It is his best, and maybe this is the map where he plays this straight up because it is his best map, but only time will tell, because with how crazy the games have been tonight, anything could happen.
It's been very back and forth, a very entertaining night so far for sure, and we've seen some crazy builds on this map in the past. I think we saw the Charged Zealot all in on this one as well. I forget which Protoss did that one. I think it was Classic, actually, a little bit earlier on in this league. This is a very cute kind of play where you come in here and you threaten that 3rd base before there's enough army units on the map, and you force a bunch of Lings out of the Zerg player. That hatchery is getting pretty low.
He just needs to finish it and get a transfuse, but it's not quite ready yet. He does cancel it, actually. I am not 100% sure if it would have finished or not, but it was pretty damn close, and that's so unfortunate because not only did he have to cancel this nearly completed hatchery, it might as well have been a kill basically for what it's worth, he also made a massive amount of Lings that could have been drones. So now Classic sits 2 base versus a very delayed 3rd base, so essentially 2 base versus 2 base for a long time. With the better probe count, he's teching up to the Void Rays. He's going to have the way to take this 3rd soon. After the Void Ray comes out, he'll push the Overlords away and might just grab an Oracle again for safety to move into that 3rd base. And I'm liking Classic's position very much so from this. And Solar just had that up a little bit faster. The transfuses go off, the overcharge wears off, he has the Lings for the surround, and it's a different story. But Oracle, as predicted, will be the follow-up. But less predictably, it is going to be the Stargate 2 for 2, and maybe this becomes the new standard PvZ.
Well, we saw its strength in game number 2 out of that. We saw the strength even out of Deer, the idea behind it, even though the execution towards the end of the game wasn't the greatest. It denies all scouting. As the Zerg, you essentially have to assume that he is going double Stargate. If it becomes meta, it will be easier to assume, obviously. But in this weird moment where it's slowly becoming meta, you have a couple of choices. Make a ton of extra queens, or you go straight into Hydras as fast as possible. And this time, Solar, he sees the Void Rays, and he's like, okay, Hydras it is. I suppose you want to try to play this game again. Classic, he could have tried to trick him by making a Void Ray and then stopping all air unit production and go into something that counters the Hydras, perhaps like the Colossi that Deer went for, or maybe even just quick tech into Storm. But Classic, known for going for builds that he feels comfortable with, doesn't like to mix it up all too often, so it makes sense to me that he's doing this again.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, because Classic is not the innovator. He is the guy who takes something that someone else has already done. He does it better, makes it the standard build. He's very much like Hero in that way, a lot would say. Hero, of course, more known for his control, but here comes the attack. Spore Crawler is going to be the target here yet again, but there's Transfuses this time. Does target down the Queen, though. Gets away with the Void Ray. Will these Oracles survive? That's the big question. Don't think this last one will. Oh, one shot away. And it's going to be the triple Stargate. I mean, this doesn't get much weirder than this in terms of what we know to be true of the match and what we know to be meta. And it looks like things are changing rapidly. Forge comes up here, just going to turtle up behind this Mass Oracle play. We saw the Mass Oracle fail to the Hydra, though, in the straight-up engage. We saw the lack of respect by Deer when Byo moved across the map to counterattack when he did that massive damage. I think he's going to need more than just Oracles when the army size gets large enough. And sure, he did some damage to Solar, but not critical damage. So the Hydra production is still very much in effect.
Yeah, we're going to get to see what happens when you make an insane amount of Oracles, but you keep them all alive. I believe that Deer, he lost some of them as he went in for further harass, as Classic might do at this moment. He's prodding in towards the main, but continuous Oracle production, 3 at a time. Looking to get that Twilight Council up as well. Baneling Nest is only about halfway done, as Solar on 61 drones is making only fighting units, only attacking units. He wants to hit a similar timing.
Yeah, maybe before Charge is ready, if Charge is going to be the follow-up here for Classic as it was for Deer, and with all these Zealots added to the army, it looks like it, right? The +1's coming up here. Soon we'll have the Twilight Council finished, and with the reduced cost of Charge in the recent balance update, you'd think that that's probably going to come out very, very soon. And here comes the Baneling attack. Charge not going to be very effective against that, but the Oracles will be. The question is, does he have sentries? Because I don't see very many.
He has 0. Oh, he has 1.
Okay.
He's got 1. That's not enough to get this ramp, but it's enough for Guardian Shield, and that's what he's going to go for.
This
Guardian
could just
Shield.
be a smash here of this army. It gets pushed into the back there. He doesn't want to commit all the way in with a quadruple overcharge, but when that wears off, there's nothing to stop the floodgate of the Hydra just getting on top of this inferior gateway army that doesn't have charge. The Oracles, there are 14 of them, but against 30 Hydras, is that going to be enough? I think the answer is very unlikely a yes, because look at the Hydras. They're doing so much damage already. 15 Oracles coming in out now. Here's the experiment. Let's find out.
Let's take a look, and all those Hydras, they weren't targeting down the Oracles in the beginning, and that's going to be enough. Classic, he has done it with this Oracle army against the Hydras as they slaughter that army. Not all of them were targeting the Oracles, and you need them to be right at the beginning if you want to have any chance.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely very experimental, what we're watching here in this professional game of StarCraft 2. Never quite seen a battle like this one. Sure, outside of Haz or SOS shenanigans, we never really saw anything like this before in Asia for PvZ, but it's becoming very meta very quickly here tonight. Already seen twice now. And Hydras, desperately, he's cranking them out here. Well, this has bought enough time for Classic, who still has the pressure of the Oracles on the map, to continue to move across the map, put pressure on Solar while taking the 4th base. Charge is done now. That was something that was also missing in that fight that could have turned it even further into his favor. The Oracle count is still strong. I never thought we'd see a meta where mass Oracles was actually a thing. We saw people experimenting in the beta of Heart of the Swarm. We saw people say, okay, this unit doesn't do a lot of damage. What happens if we make a lot of them? We saw so much experimentation throughout the beginning of this unit's lifetime, basically, its existence. But it looks like it's becoming finally a staple unit, even though it was always meant to be light harass, the entomb ability they had at the beginning before its rework to stop minerals from mining, and then it became much toned down in DPS. Is used just for killing workers, sometimes for fighting groups of Zerglings to defend a third base, but never as a unit composition to use for defense and attack against Hydras. Considered to be an anti-air unit. I mean, we're seeing history made really throughout this week now with this coming back into the meta.
And you see that he doesn't stay on it forever. He remakes to 13 Oracles, which is a very formidable Oracle army. You always have to respect this. All of your Hydras have to be together at all times, and that's really where the weakness lies in Solar's army comp, because the Oracles, they're going to be pretty fast. They can fly around. They can go over terrain. They'll always be threatening. So the Hydras, they have to stay at home. You can't really go for another attack. You lost the first one, so you just try to take another base. But now, the Classic has been given so much room to take that fourth base you were talking about, to get Storm up, to have even more gas going for the 7th and 8th gas, to continue even more Oracle production on the backside, because why not? He's got those charged Zealots. And this is going to be a really scary attack when he eventually goes for it.
I think you could make the argument for getting plating for the Oracles at this point from your cybernetics core with how many he's committed to.
16.
Yeah, 16 at this stage.
It's like Reapers and Oracles, these weird harassy type units are coming back en masse.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, you know, we'll hold that thought. He's going to come in here, again, just focus down the Spore Crawler. One Spore might be enough against the first Oracle or the second one, but not so much against the mass Oracle army. Controls the high ground here with Storms.
I don't know about this, though. The Oracles are not in position, right? He's going to kill a bunch of drones, though. He will lose all these very cheap Zealots, and this is what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Going to lose his lair, going to lose all of his tech. And so now he just has these Hydras, and that's about it. We'll focus on the Hydra Den. Not going to be on this map anymore.
Okay, just going to kill Hydras that spawn too. This army is also hyper-mobile, the Oracle army. It's one of the fastest armies you could ever have. It's also flying. Takes a while to build up this critical mass, but he does get it. A lot of expensive High Templar were lost, but he's got some stasis wards up now to slow down the advance of the Zerg army. The tech tree has been reset. Not only did he lose the Hydra Den, but the lair, as you mentioned, the spawning pool has to be remade to make a lair, to make another Hydralisk Den. So the last Hydras we'll ever see, and I think this game is basically already over, barring a huge control mistake here for Solar, for Classic, who still has plenty of energy on these Oracles.
Yeah, plenty of energy on that, and also on the High Templar. Goodbye, Mr. Hydra Army. GG Classic will take the 2-1 victory.
And for the first time since the Oracle's release, we have it not as a harassment unit. And this is not the first time we've seen this. We've seen it a few times over the course of the meta, but it's now a standard composition in this matchup, not as a harasser, but a harasser, then a defender, and then an army composition, a staple unit of moving across the map very quickly, forcing the Hydralisk composition. We saw Storm the answer to the Hydras, but perhaps we might even see variations going forward where we see Colossi as the transition after this for dealing the AoE damage, dealing with those Hydralisks. And Classic with a smile on his face. This time he's the one who throws the curveball.
Both of the players having smiles on their faces, because I heard, or rather I saw Solar mouthing in the booth. He's like, what the hell was that, right? He's trying to process what this kind of build is, right? And I was even thinking, kind of as a funny afterthought, instead of using the zapping ability, what about a ton of stasis wards all littered across the map? How is Solar ever going to move through that minefield with the supporting army? It's like you fight against 5 Hydras at a time, they can just never make it through. I mean, this would be an interesting way to play.
Yeah, this is just the beginning. People will figure out how to do this better and better, of course, unless it gets nerfed or somehow it's like, oh, okay, what if I just like brush Vipers, do Parasitic Bomb or something like that? But no one knows. Yeah, nobody knows what to do yet. So right now it's like, oh, we don't even know. Like, he's just like, I guess I just go kill his lair. But when you get better and better at this and you start controlling and practicing this, then suddenly we are going to see more stasis wards. You and our minds are totally linked, because that was the first thing I was thinking. I was like, what about the counterattacks? What if he just has like 8 stasis wards? Nothing could ever attack him. No Lings can ever come across.
You start
no
off with that, and you're like, okay, trying to go for a base trade. Try to go for that. I'll just go to your main and kill the rest of your stuff, because you should have enough energy left over. But guys, we are going to go to our last commercial break of the night before we get into our last series of the night, Dark versus Stats.